On the high world of Darcel 9, where the towers scraped low clouds and streets hummed with engineered harmony, a platform was raised in the heart of the Citadel Square. It stood black and cold like a wound in the marble plaza. Around it swirled tens of thousands of beings from all corners of the Concord. Not a voice among them spoke as the execution hour approached. Even the wind was quiet, as if unwilling to carry what was about to happen. Malin Oren stood at the center of the stage, her bare feet pressed to smooth obsidian, her wrists untied, no bonds, no cage. Only silence and a soft wind that stirred her long hair behind her shoulders. She wore no uniform, just a simple gray tunic that fell to her knees. The fabric folded in old earth fashion, something few here had seen before. She did not speak. She did not bow her head. She only waited, eyes closed, hands resting calmly at her sides. Above her the sky flickered with pale lights as orbiting drones hovered in perfect formation. Each one broadcast the scene live across Concord systems. No delay, no filters. Every twitch of Melon's lips, every breath of wind, transmitted into the homes and minds of 1,000 worlds. For many, it was their first time seeing a human up close. A real one, not a training image, not a propaganda feed. A voice echoed over the square. It belonged to Marcus Darwin, High Speaker of the Order of Regulation. He stood on a gilded dais surrounded by armored guards and shining officials. His voice was confident but forced. "This is not punishment," he declared. "It is preservation. She is the whisper that breaks the dome. She is the thread that pulls down the web. Her crime is language, and that crime ends today." The crowd remained still, unmoving, unbreathing. Children watched from balconies. Diplomats adjusted translation cuffs. Somewhere a musician stopped tuning a string. Even the birds that usually circled the city's tallest spires did not fly that morning. Malin opened her eyes then, not wide, just enough to see the clouds above. Her gaze did not fall on her accusers, not on the watchers, not on the drones, only on the sky, soft and pale like morning breath. And then she did something no one expected. She smiled. The executioners stepped forward, twin figures in matte silver armor. Each carried a plasma stave, designed not to leave a mess, but to erase without flame. The moment they moved, the crowd leaned forward in subtle tension, not out of joy or fury, but the kind of fear that doesn't fully understand its shape yet. The staves were raised. They glowed white with charge. Marcus lifted his hand. "Begin." The first stroke fell, clean and bright. A whisper of searing light that sliced through air and silence alike. The hum echoed down alleys and across oceans. Melon's body fell forward slightly, her breath catching, her knees bending, not out of pain but completion. The crowd waited for a scream, a cry, a final plea. Instead, they heard 4 words. The cameras caught it. Her lips moving just once, quiet and clear, 4 syllables in a forgotten dialect, not one that most present understood, but enough to freeze the air. Technicians blinked at frozen screens, feeds flickered and then dimmed. Not blacked out, not hacked, simply paused, like the universe had taken a sharp breath and refused to exhale. Above the city, a small pulse rippled through the sky, gentle and strange, a color that didn't match the spectrum, something like violet and gold and rain all at once. It passed without sound, but every living thing felt it in the bones. In the command center, 2 levels beneath the plaza, control boards lit up with error codes, feeds stalled, energy grids misaligned by half a second. Orbital drones began to drift without direction, and yet no attack was registered. No incoming threat detected. "She's already there," whispered one technician, replaying Melon's final moment in a loop. The words were not a curse, not a warning, but a message. Marcus turned toward his aides, furious and confused. "Resume the feed," he ordered. "Activate backup signal. Replace the silence." But silence does not obey orders. on 3 minor worlds in the outer string. Small energy stations blinked out at that exact moment. No explosion, no alarms, just absence. Ships in orbit lost navigation, local markets fell dark, and children pointed at stars that no longer blinked. They are just accidents, Marcus insisted to no one in particular. System flukes, unrelated, but the people did not move. The watchers did not cheer. The audience stayed frozen like stone around a living memory. Melon's body still rested on the slab, her hair caught in the breeze, and her lips curved in a smile that had not faded. The universe had felt something shift, not in power but in rhythm, and somewhere beyond their reach something had awakened, not to avenge, not to destroy, but to remind. As the square slowly emptied, one child asked her mother, "What did she say?" And the mother shook her head gently, unsure of the words but certain of their weight. She said it was beginning. The mother whispered, and that was enough to make the wind return. Quiet, but not empty. Filled now with something older than sound, something waiting, something that remembered. Asterisk far from the glittering towers of Darcel 9 lay the moon farm of Myrit Station, a place most maps forgot. Its surface was gray and cracked, its air pulled from slow machines older than the farmers who tended them. Among the rows of nutrient crates worked Civil, once a supply ship technician, now a gardener of root vines that tasted like bitter honey. He lived quiet days turning soil with broken gloves. The whole station relied on his crops, though few ever thanked him. Yet on this morning, the irrigation pipes shivered and the data lights went black. Not from storm or rust, but from a message carried through hidden code. Civil glanced at the drooping leaves. He knew plants, and he knew circuits. This blackout felt like neither failure nor attack. Rather, it felt like a sigh after holding breath too long. He opened a rusted terminal near the seed storage. The screen flickered violet, gold, and rain, colored just like the ripple that shook the sky of Darcel 9. 4 words swam across the pixels in small English letters. "Keep listening," they whispered, then vanished. The terminal went dead again. Civil wiped dust from his sleeves and felt a tremor in his chest. Not fear, something else, something like memory waking across the inner belt on the teaching ship Leora. A girl named Irene stared at her lesson board. She was 12, born in zero gravity. Her hair floated in soft spirals around her face. She studied galactic law and official dialects, yet her secret joy was collecting lost human lullabies recorded long before the Concord banned Earth languages. When the execution of Malin Oren reached the Leora feed had already paused. Irene never saw the blade, she only saw the sudden silence. In that hush, the ship lights dimmed, and the servers released an old song, a gentle tune of rivers and lanterns. The melody wrapped the girl like a warm blanket. She felt she had known it all her life, though she had never heard it before. Teachers tried to reset the board. Power cycles failed. The melody kept playing across every channel. Some students covered their ears. Others cried without knowing why. Irene simply listened. The song ended with 4 soft notes that matched Melon's final syllables. A soft click followed. Every locked archive on the ship opened at once. Thousands of files and long-forgotten tongues. Maps to secret gardens. Instructions for water purification without Concord oversight. Her young eyes widened. She copied everything onto a small crystal chip and tucked it in her pocket. Her hands shook not from fear but from wonder. In orbit around the mining world of Nonnet sat the cruiser Ceres shield. Commander Colin Dry paced the deck. His reputation was iron, loyal to the Concord. Yet even he felt unsettled since the broadcast. His officers reported strange malfunctions. Targeting arrays refusing to lock. Guidance drones spinning gentle circles like children at play. The crew blamed solar interference. Dry knew better. He requested a direct link to High Council Command. Static answered. Then a single image. Melon's calm face frozen mid-smile. 4 words beneath. She's already inside. Dry's throat tightened. He felt something shift behind the hull plates, as though the ship itself had chosen a new captain. While officials panicked, small people moved. Gardeners like Civil, students like Iron, engineers hidden in dusty ports. They had been waiting for a signal, not a call to war, but a quiet invitation to remember. These were the gardeners who listened. They tended circuits the way others tended roses, weaving code into soil, planting kindness beneath sensors. Across dozens of planets, they woke their seeds. Water plants drew extra moisture for wasteland camps. Hospital lights flickered on in districts long abandoned. Food printers, once locked by council ration codes, now spilled. Bread for hungry children, no trumpets, no banners, just needs met in silence. Civil repaired his irrigation lines with new instructions pulled from the dead terminal. The vines perked up, leaves turning bright as emerald glass. He whispered thank you, though. He did not know who to thank. Above him, cargo drones rerouted themselves to drop medical packs instead of ore containers. He watched them sparkle across the sky like sudden stars. He realized someone had rewritten the roads of the heavens, not with bombs, but with mercy. On the Leora, Iron gathered a circle of students in the observation bubble. She played one unlocked file after another. Stories of Earth's quiet revolutions, tales of gardens planted in deserts, and libraries built in shattered cities. The children listened wide-eyed. They began to translate the texts into every dialect they knew. Soon their whispered recordings drifted out of the ship's communication vents, spreading songs of seed and soil to every receiver within 100 light years. Authorities tried to jam the signals, but every jammer turned itself off as if tired of shouting. Commander Dry stood on the Ceres Shields bridge as navigation maps redrew in real time. Trade routes once marked as restricted now glowed open. Relief convoys plotted courses no admiral had authorized. Dry watched the crew's fear melt into quiet resolve. One medic stepped forward and asked permission to deliver supplies to a cold-swept settlement the Concord had ignored for years. Dry thought of Mellon's last words. He nodded slowly. Yes, go, help them. In that moment, he felt his rank dissolve, replaced by something older, something human. And so beneath the circuits a new pulse moved, not a virus of destruction, but a root system of care. Mellon's whispered seeds sprouted in hidden code, in young hearts, and in the hands of weary gardeners who finally heard the call to water the galaxy with gentle defiance. As systems lit up with acts of quiet good, the Concord realized too late that they were not fighting soldiers. They were facing memory, and memory had already seeded every corner of their empire with unstoppable growth. The gardeners had listened. Now the ruins would bloom. The stars above the Concord rim were quiet like old lanterns drained of oil. Trade beacons that once blinked on every frequency now shone only in faint pulses of orphan code. Along those darkened lanes drifted vessels that no registry listed. They were small freighters painted with rust, medical scows patched with scrap, and library ships whose hulls carried poems instead of flags. None bore cannons or fighter bays. Yet their arrivals stirred more fear in the High Council than an armada ever could, because their silence was deliberate and their path precise. Alra 10 guided the first of these shadow ships. She had been a station pilot decades ago, retired after a micrometeor severed the nerves in her left arm. The Concord sent her a medal and forgot her, yet somewhere in the years of quiet, she learned to read the secret currents of space. While officials tracked power signatures, she followed whisper routes, narrow corridors of static that only old analog gauges could sense. When Malin Oren breathed her final words, Alra felt them travel like ripples through vacuum, and her fingers found the thruster toggles without thought. She set a course for the abandoned relay chain between two quarantine sectors. Others followed, unseen, unhurried. Naren Vess was the rumor that walked among them. No one aboard the Wandering Fleet had met him in person. Stories claimed he rode a cargo skiff, It could slide between sensor grids like a shadow between candle flames. He left instructions in chalk on docking clamps, in lullabies broadcast at midnight, in the alignment of supply crates stacked on empty decks. Each message simple: help first, hide later, break nothing you can mend. Every ship that joined the silent tide carried food printers, seed vaults, archives, medical capsules, not guns. Their logs spoke of worlds they planned to reach, colonies left starving by Concord ration cuts, mining moons where children slept, near toxic vents, and border stations where soldiers waited for orders that would never come. In the Orvos Command Citadel, admirals stared at tactical screens that showed no threats, yet weighed like nightmares. Sensor triangles glowed around non-hostile emissions. The data tags said unknown humanitarian craft, but the political alarms screamed invasion. Commanders demanded intercept runs, yet each time an assault cruiser tried to target one of the stranger ships, firing codes converted themselves to orchard growth parameters. Missile bays projected lists of local famine statistics instead of coordinates. Technicians swore sabotage. Servers replied integration completed. Please confirm generosity. No one dared press confirm. On the cruiser Seaspear, Lieutenant Laren Velt watched helplessly as her targeting grid transformed into a map of aquifer faults on a drought planet 2 sectors away. The grid traced how subterranean water could be pulled to the surface with low power pumps. Velt's crew could not see an enemy, only instructions for healing land. She felt her uniform weigh heavy with guilt she had never examined. What if the enemy was not a destroyer, but a mirror, showing them what they chose to ignore? She saved the blueprint to her personal pad and wondered why compassion felt like mutiny. Meanwhile, the silent ships glided into orbits stripped of customs checks. They beamed down soft light corridors called kindness drops. Machines descended, unpacked solar stills, small libraries, toolkits, then moved on. Villagers woke to find grain sprouting in fields previously cracked. Miners discovered new filtration masks delivered at shift change. Children held picture books written in every dialect across the belt. Nobody asked payment, no banners claimed credit. The only emblem was the faint outline of a kneeling figure printed on a corner of each crate. 4 syllables beside it: remember and grow. News of these gifts spread through marketplaces faster than military edicts. A farmer on Rissel 3 saw her harvest triple after using the soil tabs left on her doorstep. She folded the empty pack and carried it to the village radio mast. There she read the tiny print aloud to all who would listen. Plant hope in rows of patience, water with shared hands. Soon reports reached Central Fleets. The frontline troops were trading weapons for seed kits. Not by force, but by yearning. Whole regiments refused to fire on the harmless vessels, claiming the ships without war paint had already defeated them. By feeding their mothers and sons. Back on Aura 10's bridge, the old pilot watched Starfield scroll across cracked glass. Her crew were teachers, medics, poets, none skilled in combat. Still they monitored Concord frequencies with calm focus. Each time a distress code crackled from a station cut off by malfunction or rebel blockade, they answered with coordinates and a warm promise. Hold out, we are near. Sometimes they arrived to find broken hulls in silent halls. Sometimes they found frightened engineers who lowered their rifles at the sight of bandaged hands instead of armor. Every rescue added another quiet beacon to the interstellar web, a constellation of gratitude growing brighter than any fleet parade. Naren Vos finally spoke to the fleet in a single shared transmission, his voice soft like distant rain. The Concord taught us that strength is measured by obedience. He said, we remember another scale, one where strength is the number of meals served, the number of stories kept safe, a number of strangers who learn each other's names. We are the silence between stars, the breath you never counted. We travel without war paint because we already wear every color of the worlds we aid. Let the council fire if they must. Every rocket will bloom into orchards. Every shield they raise will reflect their own hunger. We will not shout. We will feed. And in feeding, we will change the shape of tomorrow. Those words echoed across empty cargo holds and crowded city slums alike. Some listeners wept without knowing why. Others smiled and filed away their blaster licenses, deciding to grow citrus in hydroponic trays instead. Admirals raged. Ministers drafted new decrees, but the decrees crashed under the same invisible rewrite. Printouts returned blank, except for 4 English words at the bottom margin. Kindness edits everything, and so the silent fleet drifted on, leaving tides of harvest in its wake. Ships without war paint painting the galaxy in humble color. Beneath starshine and the quiet hum of repurposed engines, Alra 10 guided her vessel toward the next pale beacon that needed warmth, her once injured arms steady on the throttle, her crew ready with seeds and songs. The void around them deep, yet no longer empty, filled with the slow, unavoidable music of worlds learning how to heal themselves. On the ruined steps of the old Concord Archive Tower on Selvar 4, a young girl knelt beside a rusted broadcast console. Her name was Rena Oren, younger sister of the one they called the Kneeling Girl. Her fingers brushed away layers of ash and vine, uncovering a signal plate cracked but still warm with dormant light. She did not speak as she worked. She did not cry. She only hummed the same tune Malin once taught her, a song with no words, but full of meaning, full of memory, across the galaxy. In cities once loyal to the Concord, citizens awoke to silence. Not the silence of broken systems or failing grids, but something heavier, something final. Terminals flashed with error codes rewritten in calm English. Phrases like "we remember" and "you are always seen" floated gently across official screens. Panic didn't spread, confusion did, and then stillness. A stillness filled with questions no government could answer, no war room could track. High over the planet of Yarrow's Rest, Ambassador Kenville from the Free Belt watched in disbelief as a map of former Concord territory collapsed in real time. Not from attack, not from blockade, but from decision. Whole sectors marked themselves as neutral, sovereign, even grateful. His aide showed him a dozen reports from rebel moons where supply chains reconnected overnight, not by force, but by guidance from unnamed ships, with old human songs playing on loop. What? Change them. Kenville whispered. Why now? Because someone kneeled, the aide replied, and someone else listened. Rena touched the final wire on the console, and the screen came alive. Flickering blue, then gold. She typed slowly, deliberately. 4 words. Begin the echo line. Her hands trembled as she sent the signal, not out of fear, but from understanding that this was not revenge. This was a return, and every return must be quiet enough to be heard. On the planet Neareth's breath, a ship landed silently in a field of shattered machines. Out stepped a doctor, once branded an outsider, who now found villagers waiting with blankets in open arms. They remembered her, not as a spy, but as the one who cured their water years ago, without asking, without praise. They had hidden her name when the Concord demanded records, and now they welcomed her back with soft smiles and baskets of fruit. Everywhere the story repeated, a quiet person, once ignored or exiled, returned to find roots had taken hold in the absence. They were teachers who had taught beyond the edge of maps, engineers who had repaired machines no one else would touch, cooks who had fed starving miners without asking who they voted for, and their names were spoken now with care, like verses of an old poem rediscovered in time. In the remnants of the Concord's council chamber, Chancellor Raves stood alone. Reports scattered across the floor, no battles listed, only reclassifications, no armies lost, only systems renamed by their own citizens. He tried to issue orders, but the voice protocol returned a single phrase: command not found. Please try kindness. He stared at the blank screen and whispered to the empty room. Where did it all go? Behind him, Advisor Leaner did not answer. She watched a live feed from orbit, where unmarked ships hovered with lights dimmed, waiting, not invading, not demanding. Just present, the galaxy was not being conquered. It was remembering itself, and memory was far more powerful than any fleet ever built back on Selvar 4. Rena stood from the console and walked into the overgrown courtyard. The wind moved through tall grasses where a statue now stood, not of a warrior or a ruler, but of her sister. Malin, frozen mid-smile, not defiant, not broken, just at peace. Hands open at her sides, a pose not of resistance, but of offering. A small crowd gathered there each dusk, people from many planets, speaking many tongues. They brought tokens, not of war, but of gratitude. Drawings from children, seeds from revived. Farms. Pieces of old clothing sewn into one large banner that simply read in stitched letters. We saw her, and beneath it, in the soil, someone had planted a tree, in orbit, on the medical vessel Fernlight. Captain Solia watched her crew prepare to land. On another forgotten world, they had no weapons, no orders, just maps marked by kindness. The stars above were changing, not in color but in name, charted again, not by distance, but by care. And every point of light was a promise once kept by someone who had stayed quiet too long. A final broadcast hummed into existence across all remaining Concord channels. No music, no flag, just a voice. It was Rena's. Soft and steady, she did not mention war, did not offer peace terms. She simply spoke of her sister. She spoke of a girl who had bowed not to surrender, but to plant something beneath the eyes of those who thought power was the only language worth hearing. Malin did not resist, Rena said, because she knew resistance was not always loud. Sometimes it is patient, sometimes it waits in the soil. Sometimes it sings in kitchens and on playgrounds. Sometimes it kneels and watches the sky. The feed ended with one image. The same smile Malin wore as the stars dimmed behind her. And beneath it, one final message: we do not erase empires. We outgrow them, and across the galaxy, gardens began to bloom where weapons once stood. Archives filled with forgotten songs opened their doors, and silence spread once more. Not empty, not fearful, but full of verses too long ignored, waiting now to be sung again by 1,000 voices, together as one.